I'm 35 years old and a police officer in Chicago. After a long, grueling shift, I was finally heading home. The train I was waiting for was the 11:45 p.m., which usually provided a sense of calm after a tough day. Normally, the station would be bustling, but tonight there was a strange stillness that lingered in the air. I stepped onto the platform, feeling the cold breeze brush against my skin. The usual crowd of commuters was absent, leaving behind an unsettling quietness. The dim lights above flickered, casting long, eerie shadows. I tightened my jacket around me, feeling exposed and uneasy in the station's solitude. As I walked toward the end of the platform, I was struck by the silence. A few people were scattered about, but there were no conversations, just the occasional rustle of paper or someone adjusting their bags. My phone vibrated in my pocket, breaking my focus. I quickly pulled it out to check. It was just a message from my partner, a quick check-in. I sighed, grateful for the connection to the outside world. But as I tucked the phone away, I noticed something odd, the sound of music, footsteps. A faint tapping in the distance, oddly familiar yet out of place. I paused, glancing over my shoulder, hoping it was just my tired mind playing tricks. But the sound only grew louder. I tried to dismiss it as some late-night commuter, but it didn't feel right. The sound was too steady, too deliberate. I turned to look behind me, but the platform was still empty. It wasn't the usual echo of footsteps. It felt wrong. The rhythm matched mine, as if someone was trailing behind me, mimicking my steps just a fraction of a second off. My heart began to race. I no longer walked in a straight line, my gaze darting across the platform searching for the source. I told myself it was nothing and quickened my pace, trying to shake off the chilling sensation creeping up my spine. The train would arrive soon, and I'd be gone from that uneasy atmosphere. But with every step, the sound shadowed me, always close, never far behind. I turned again, but the platform remained barren. The silence between those footsteps became heavier, and I could feel my breath growing shallow. The echo of my boots on the concrete felt too pronounced, too sharp amidst the stillness. The flickering lights above seemed like a warning. Something was amiss. Something was lurking. I hurried down the platform, my eyes scanning every corner. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. The footsteps didn't waver. No one was there. Then it hit me like a jolt of ice water. Whoever, whatever, was following me remained unseen, yet they mirrored my every move. I quickened my pace, feeling breathless as I searched the empty platform. The footsteps were now more distinct, almost mocking. I could feel a presence behind me, a chill creeping up my neck that intensified with each step. Once again, I glanced over my shoulder, just darkness stretching behind me. The station felt even more desolate now. The dim lights above flickered as if they too were struggling. I was alone, but the relentless sound of footsteps lingered, closer with every stride. I tried to convince myself it was just fatigue, but my instincts warned me otherwise. The uneasy sensation was undeniable. I reached the end of the platform, hoping to glimpse the train's headlights in the distance, but just saw an engulfing darkness. The footsteps stopped momentarily, giving a fleeting sense of relief, one that was quickly shattered as they resumed. This time faster, as if the figure was racing to catch up. My heart pounded. It wasn't just the cadence that felt off. It was as if whoever was behind me was stalking me. I took a step forward, and once again the footsteps echoed in perfect synchronization. They were quickening, drawing closer. I scanned the area desperately, wishing to find someone, anyone else around. I had faced fear in my line of work before, but this felt different. It wasn't just anxiety. It was a nagging sense of something deeply wrong, a sinister presence I couldn't explain. I stood frozen for a moment, staring into the dark abyss, surrounded by silence, yet feeling an intruding sensation of being watched. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the footsteps ceased. Turning quickly, I swept my gaze across the entire platform. Still nothing. The station felt emptier, the air thick with an uncomfortable stillness. I took a step back, half expecting someone to leap from the shadows. but it was only the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. As I started moving again, this time more cautiously, my eyes scanned every shadow. The sound of the footsteps, the platform extended endlessly in the dim light, and I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something was lurking just out of sight, waiting. I began walking towards the nearest exit. The station felt unnaturally quiet now, and the chill started to seep into my bones. My mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Was I merely imagining things? Was fatigue clouding my judgment? But no, the footsteps had been real, hadn't they? I glanced over my shoulder yet again. Nothing. Still, the tension lingered, thick and stifling. I had almost reached the exit when I heard it again. The footsteps. But this time, they were no longer behind me. They were ahead of me. I froze in place, staring into the darkness ahead. My instincts screamed at me to turn around and flee, but my body wouldn't respond. I stood there, eyes fixed on the obscurity at the end of the platform. The footsteps ahead grew louder, each one echoing off the walls like a drumbeat in the heavy silence. My body felt paralyzed as a wave of cold sweat formed on my brow. My breath was shallow. The only sound that filled my ears was the pounding of my own heartbeat. I was certain there was no one there except for those footsteps. They were unmistakable. I turned slowly, nervously scanning the station. The platform was still empty, illuminated only by the dim light and the shadows stretching across the cold concrete. My mind raced to rationalize the situation. Was this some kind of prank? Perhaps late-night commuters testing my nerves? But the heaviness in the air, that oppressive silence, suggested something far more sinister. With a surge of adrenaline, I broke the spell that held me captive. I turned back toward the exit, determined to leave the station as quickly as possible. But before I could move, I heard the footsteps again, closer now, right behind me. They were gaining speed, almost as if someone was sprinting after me. But when I spun around, there was nobody there. It felt like an unseen force was pursuing me, mimicking my every movement. I was at a loss for what to do. The feeling of being watched was inescapable. It was as if I were ensnared in a nightmare, unable to find my way out. Each time I glanced behind me, I was met only with the dark emptiness of the platform. Yet the sound, it never ceased. It continued to reverberate in my ears, as if it were closing in on me. The train should have arrived by now. It always did. But tonight, it was nowhere in sight. My frustration turned to panic. Why hadn't the train come yet? Why was I alone? The platform felt like a timeless prison, a world where I was the last remaining soul. The footsteps never faded. They were right behind me, relentless. I broke into a sprint. My legs ached. My breath struggled to keep pace as I raced down the platform. I dared not look back. Couldn't. The footsteps kept up with me, gaining speed, as though something was hot on my heels. But no matter how fast I ran, the exit seemed ever more distant. The station morphed into a labyrinth, and I was lost within it. My chest tightened with fear as I ran. The footsteps were right behind me, so close I could feel the air stir with each step. I looked around, desperate for the train's headlights to pierce through the darkness. But there was nothing, only the sound of my own ragged breaths and the echoing footsteps trailing me. The station felt like a trap, a maze with no escape. I pushed harder, running until my legs screamed in agony. But it didn't matter. Couldn't stop. I had to escape. My heart thundered as I neared the end of the platform, but the footsteps were still there. Every time I tried to veer towards the exit, they followed, echoing my every move. My head spun as I approached the stairs leading to the street. But when I looked down, only darkness greeted me. I was almost there, almost safe, when I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder. I screamed and whipped around, but there was no one there. Only the expanse of emptiness before me. My knees buckled, and I collapsed onto the platform. The footsteps ceased, and a deep, heavy silence enveloped me. I remained on the ground, breathing heavily, my heart racing in my chest. I had no sense of how much time had passed. The platform was still empty, and the train was still absent. I managed to get back to my feet, still haunted by that cold touch on my shoulder. My mind was a chaos of confusion. Was I imagining it? Had I really felt someone there? I stumbled to the edge of the platform, staring down at the tracks. The sound of the footsteps was gone, but the lingering chill remained. The train still hadn't arrived. It felt like I was trapped in a perpetual nightmare, unable to wake up. I glanced over my shoulder one last time, but this time I heard nothing, only the oppressive silence. Then, in the distance, I saw the train's headlights finally approaching. But as I took a step forward, I felt a cold breath against my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing. Nothing except the shadows looming around me. I'm 19 and live alone in a small second-floor apartment close to the University of Boston. Most days follow a routine: morning classes, a part-time job at a bookstore, and long nights of studying. On that particular day, I had arranged to meet a classmate at Central Station to work on a group project. It was late afternoon, and the station was beginning to take on that eerie quiet that often settles in before nightfall. Central Station always feels strange as it starts to empty out. You can hear your own footsteps too clearly, and every spoken word echoes longer than usual. I was standing near a coffee shop, texting my friend to see where he was. That's when I noticed a guy approaching, waving as if we were long-lost friends. He seemed familiar, tall with a dark hoodie, and wore an unsettling grin, like he was about to pull a surprise. He walked up to me and said, "Hey man, I didn't think you were well enough to be out. You left your meds at the apartment." I blinked, feeling awkward, smiled, and replied, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong person." But the way his expression shifted made my stomach drop. He didn't look shocked. Instead, he seemed disappointed, like I had forgotten something essential. "It's me, Jamie, your roommate," he said in a lower voice. My heart momentarily skipped, and I instinctively laughed, thinking this was some sort of weird prank. "I live alone," I told him, still waiting for the punchline. Jamie tilted his head, his brows furrowing like he genuinely believed what he was saying. "No, dude, we've been living together for months. You've been unwell lately, remember?" His tone wasn't hostile, but it felt heavy, like someone trying to rouse you from a dream. I stared at him, unsure if he was mistaking me for someone else entirely. Then he pulled out his phone. "Look," he said, showing me a picture of us sitting on a couch with a pizza box between us and a movie paused on the screen. I examined the photo carefully. The guy on the left was definitely me. My hoodie, my chipped front tooth, and the childhood scar on my chin were all there, but I had no recollection of that night or that room. I slowly handed the phone back to him, trying to mask my unease. The image was undeniably me, not a doppelganger, but that room in the background wasn't part of my apartment, and I had never owned that couch. I was too unsettled to speak and muttered, "That can't be real." Jamie let out a soft, nervous laugh, unsure if I was joking or genuinely confused. "Are you all right, man? I told you to take it easy." His eyes darted to the passers-by, as if he didn't want to attract attention. I took a step back and said, "Seriously, I think you've got the wrong person." He didn't seem angry, just genuinely hurt, like I had betrayed him somehow. "We've lived together for months," he reiterated, even saying my name out loud. It wasn't just close. It was exact, including my middle name. I never shared my middle name at school, and it's not on social media. I asked, "How do you know that?" Jamie shrugged, as if it was no big deal. "Dude, you told me. I've seen your ID a bunch of times on the kitchen counter." My chest tightened at the ordinary way he recalled it, like he wasn't bluffing. I glanced around at the people passing by, considering whether to ask for help, though I didn't want to create a scene. "I'm going home," I said quickly, and started walking away without waiting for his reply. I expected him to call after me or perhaps even follow, but he didn't. I looked back once. He was still standing there, arms crossed, the smile gone from his face. By the time I reached the train platform, I had convinced myself he was mentally unstable or a dedicated con artist. Still, I kept glancing over my shoulder throughout the ride back. I couldn't get the image of that photo out of my mind. felt too perfect, too natural, as if it hadn't been staged. But I had never taken it. Once home, I double-locked my door and did something I hadn't done in years. I checked under my bed and in my closet like a child would do. Everything seemed just as it had that morning. My apartment looked identical, but the silence felt off, tense rather than calm. I scrolled through my phone gallery, hoping to find something, but there were no pictures of me and that guy. The living room in the photo was unfamiliar. I searched every app and even checked my iCloud, worried I might have been hacked. But there was nothing. It felt as if that photo existed solely on his phone. I tried to dismiss the thoughts and go to bed, but sleep eluded me. The darkness felt suffocating, and I kept replaying that photo in my mind. I recognized how familiar I appeared with this stranger, yet the setting felt completely foreign. I couldn't understand how I could forget someone like that. When morning arrived, I overslept and had no desire to attend class. I was drained from a night of restlessness, and my thoughts consumed me as I pondered Jamie, desperately trying to rationalize it all. Maybe he was some kind of stalker or had an unhealthy fixation on me. The thought of anything more unsettling was too much to bear, yet a small voice in me couldn't shake off the unease. That night, around midnight, a knock echoed through my apartment. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but it came again, soft yet clear. I tiptoed to the door, my heart racing. The peephole revealed no one. I checked the blinds. The street lay empty. I hesitated, listening to the silence when the knock resounded once more. Almost deciding against answering, I was overtaken by fear and curiosity. I opened the door just a crack, peering into the darkness. Nobody was there. I was about to close the door when something caught my eye. A small folded note on the ground. I bent down and picked it up, my hands shaking. The message was brief but chilling. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but we really did live together. You've just forgotten. Don't worry, I won't leave again." My throat tightened as I absorbed the words. Instinctively, I glanced around for cameras, searching for an explanation. There was nothing, just the empty street. The note felt genuine, as if it had been left by someone who truly understood me and my apartment's layout. What terrified me most was the handwriting. It was unmistakably mine. I slammed the door and locked it again, my thoughts racing. That note couldn't have been penned by anyone other than me, yet I had no memory of writing it. Did Jamie speak the truth? Had I genuinely lived with him? Was memory loss real, or was I succumbing to madness? Sinking onto the couch, I buried my head in my hands, trying to pull everything together. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was Jamie. "Don't forget who you are." Attached was a single photo, the same one from South Station. Yet this time, in the background, I spotted something I hadn't seen before. In the corner, just barely visible but unmistakable, was my apartment. The same couch, the same walls where I had lived for months. How could he have captured that photo? The following morning, I packed my belongings and left, grappling with uncertainty about my reality and what had transpired. I moved out of the apartment and changed my phone number, but a lingering feeling of unease persisted. To this day, I remain unsure of what to believe. Was Jamie real? Was I losing my grip on sanity? The only certainty I hold is that whenever I see a picture of myself, I wonder if I'm witnessing the true me or if someone else is inhabiting my life, one memory at a time. If you like this story, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was 29 when this took place, freelancing as a graphic designer in Springfield. Trains had always been a part of my life because my grandfather was a retired railroad conductor. He passed away when I was around 14, and my memories of him are mainly tied to the scent of oil, metal, and cigarette smoke. He would often say that trains had their own personalities, which I thought was just something nostalgic older folks said about their past careers. One week, I decided on a whim to visit the Liberty Junction station. It was a 3-hour drive, and I had never been there despite hearing stories all my life. My grandfather used to claim it was one of the most vibrant stations in the region. I thought I might take some pictures and possibly find a small story to illustrate. When I arrived, The sky was overcast, with a dull gray hue that made everything feel oddly silent. I parked my car and entered through the east side of the station, which felt larger and chillier than I expected. The place wasn't crowded, but it wasn't completely empty either. People drifted in and out like background figures in someone else's memories. The air carried the scent of stale coffee and floor cleaner. I spent about half an hour wandering around, snapping photos and absorbing the atmosphere. The station featured high vaulted ceilings and vintage signage that seemed decades out of date. It felt like stepping into another era. Then, I noticed an old train sitting quietly on one of the distant tracks. I almost overlooked it, tucked behind a sleek modern train that seemed out of place. This one was from the 70s, its paint faded and rust creeping in. Yet it stood firm as if refusing to fade away. A few passengers lingered nearby, waiting for their train, but no one showed interest in this vintage vehicle. That's what prompted me to step closer. When I got near enough to peek inside the engine car, something froze me in my tracks. There was a man inside wearing a conductor's cap, hunched over the controls. He looked aged, sturdy, and unsettlingly familiar. My stomach nodded. The man bore an uncanny resemblance to my grandfather. At first, I stood still, telling myself it couldn't be real. This had to be an illusion or mere coincidence. After all, my grandfather had been gone for over 15 years. But the likeness was undeniable. The way his shoulders sloped, the exact tilt of his head when concentrating. As I stepped a bit closer, trying to convince myself I was being silly, that was when the man inside turned his head. Not completely, just enough for me to see his profile clearly. A cold dread washed over me, a feeling that felt less like surprise and more like fear, as if some deep part of me understood that this was no mistake. He stared ahead, seemingly oblivious to my presence, as if he were waiting for something. That's when I noticed something even more unsettling. This train shouldn't have been there at all. I recalled something from years ago. My mother telling me he died during his last shift on a train that derailed near Springfield. I stepped back from the engine window, heart racing, suddenly questioning my grip on reality. The train before me wasn't listed on any schedule. There were no announcements, no activity around it, just this ancient machine sitting there like it had been awaiting someone. I turned around, hoping to spot a station employee, but everyone had vanished. The air felt thick, like humidity but heavier, suffused with tension. I reached into my coat for my phone, thinking maybe I could take a photo and make sense of it all later. But when I opened the camera and looked at the train through the screen, it didn't show up. The platform was there, empty, no train, no one around, just air. I lowered my phone, and the train was still physically present, solid and heavy, humming quietly. I raised the phone again, and it vanished from the screen as if it had never existed. I tried to take a photo anyway, but my phone completely froze and crashed. That's when I realized something was seriously wrong. I backed away quickly, not running but moving with that anxious shuffle you do when you're trying to conceal your fear but feeling it intensely. I made my way to the information booth and inquired if there was an old train on Platform 9. The attendant looked at me with confusion and said Platform 9 had been closed for maintenance all day. I described the train's faded metal and rusted bolts and asked if any trains resembling that model were in service. She shook her head, informing me that those types hadn't been operational in over 2 decades. When I pressed further, she pulled up a schedule and pointed out that nothing was listed for Platform 9. I didn't share what I had seen inside the train. I wandered away, trying to calm my nerves, but the air still felt charged, like I had stepped into a place where time was out of sync. I walked past a few shops and plopped down on a bench near a vending machine, gazing back at the platform. The train was still there to my eyes, but something had changed. The conductor's door stood open, a narrow metal door with peeling paint and a single step leading up. From my vantage point, it looked like shadows shifted inside the cabin. I felt an unsettling magnetic pull, as if leaving meant abandoning something, as if I was expected there. It sounds irrational, but it felt personal, not merely a matter of curiosity. I stood and took a few steps closer, not intending to go inside, but feeling compelled to approach. As I neared the edge of the platform, I noticed something new. Inside the cabin, on a small desk, was a leather-bound notebook. I recognized it immediately. It was just like the one my grandfather used to carry. That's when logic flew out the window. I climbed the single step and leaned into the conductor's cabin. No one was there now, but the notebook remained. The seat was pushed back as if someone had just vacated it, and the air held the scent of motor oil and cold metal, just like my grandpa's clothes always did. My hand shook as I reached for the notebook, lifting it with both hands as though it were something sacred. The leather felt cracked, worn at the edges, and warmer than it should have been, as if it had just been held. I flipped it open and instantly recognized the handwriting. It was my grandfather's distinct block letters. The first page had a date that twisted my stomach, March 3rd, 1976, the day he passed away. Each page contained logs just like those he used to keep, but these logs continued past the day of the accident. They detailed trips, notes, and times, including trains that no longer existed. He even mentioned events that hadn't occurred yet, such as weather patterns and service reroutes. It wasn't just strange, it felt impossible. As I leafed toward the back, I found one final entry dated 3 days before today. My name was written in bold letters at the top, followed by a chilling sentence. "He'll return here like I did." My breath caught in my throat, and I turned around quickly, expecting to see someone behind me. But the cabin was empty, silent, except for a faint hum I hadn't noticed before. That hum began to grow louder, vibrating through the floor as if something was powering up. Panicking, I jumped down from the step, stumbling onto the platform. I looked around. The station remained eerily deserted. But when I glanced back at the train, the windows had fogged up from the inside. Shadows were moving behind them, not walking but more like shifting. Passengers in slow motion seemed to turn their heads. Every window I examined appeared to reflect someone watching me. I was unable to move. I remained there, paralyzed, until a loud hiss came from the engine. Then, the train smoothly began to move forward, gliding down the tracks. Despite the schedule indicating that nothing was operational, the train deviated from any standard route. It didn't link up with the station's layout. It entered a tunnel I didn't recognize, one I hadn't noticed when I arrived. As it left my view, the hum dissipated. The atmosphere returned to its usual state, and an announcement at the station sprang to life as if nothing had occurred. The next train to California would arrive in 10 minutes. I exited the station in a daze, clutching my notebook. No one questioned my presence. No one even seemed aware that I had ventured somewhere I wasn't meant to be. After I returned to my apartment, I attempted to look up the train route. I found no information whatsoever. No pictures, no references, not a single blueprint resembling that model. Weeks have passed, and I still haven't opened the notebook. I keep it tucked away in my closet, wrapped in an old shirt. Yet occasionally, in the stillness of the night, I hear that soft humming again. Just last night, as I passed South Station on my way home, I noticed the conductor's door ajar once more. There was no train, just the open door,